Have you ever had that quiet, nagging thought, is my child developing like they should? Maybe they're not smiling yet. Maybe they're not talking. Maybe something just feels off. You bring it up and people say, don't worry, they'll catch up. And sometimes that's absolutely true. But other times, that gut feeling you have, it's worth listening to. The truth is, not every milestone delay is cause for panic, but there are signs that matter. Some are small and easy to overlook, but they could point to something deeper going on. So today, we're going to walk through 9 of the most important developmental signs every parent should be watching for. And I'll share what's typical, what's not, and when it might be time to take action. And stick around, because sign number 5 is something most pediatricians won't even mention unless you bring it up. But it can make a huge difference if you catch it early. Let's start with something a lot of parents assume will just click naturally: smiling. We're not talking about gas smiles or random muscle twitches here. We're talking about that first real social smile, when your baby sees your face, hears your voice, and smiles because of it. That smile is more than just adorable. It's a signal, a connection, a little window into your baby's developing brain. It shows that they recognize people, that they're engaged, that their social and emotional wiring is turning on. Most babies start giving real social smiles around 6 to 8 weeks, and by 3 months, they're usually doing it pretty consistently. So if your baby is past the 12-week mark and isn't smiling at people, not toys, not walls, but actual human faces, it could be time to pay attention. Now here's where I want to pause and reassure you. Some babies are born more serious. Some were born early, and their development might be a few weeks behind. And sometimes it's just a phase. They're fussy, they're tired, they're overstimulated, and they're just not feeling super social. But if your baby rarely locks eyes with you, if they seem to look past you instead of at you, if they never react to your silly faces, your sing-song voice, your playful coos, that's something to mention at your next checkup. And not because something is definitely wrong, but because early support can be a game changer. You are your child's best observer. Your instincts matter. Let's move ahead a few months. Your baby is growing, exploring, getting louder. But are they babbling? Around 6 months old, babies typically start experimenting with sounds, string of syllables like baba, dada, gaga. It's their way of playing with language. It doesn't have to mean anything yet, but it shows their brain is starting to connect sound with communication. By 9 months, babbling usually becomes more consistent. You'll start to hear repeated patterns and even intonations that sound like a real sentence, even if it's pure gibberish. But here's the concern. If your baby isn't babbling at all by 9 months, no consonant sounds, no experimentation, no conversation-like noises, it could be a red flag for a speech or language delay. Now, a quiet baby isn't automatically a sign of trouble. Some babies are just more observant. They are listening, watching, learning. But if your baby is only making vowel sounds like ooh or ah, or if they're completely silent for long periods without any expressive noise, it's worth checking in with your pediatrician. Another clue? See how they respond when you talk. Do they coo back? Do they seem to light up? If not, there could be some gaps in auditory processing, hearing, or social engagement. And remember, babbling is a stepping stone to real words. The sooner we catch those early delays, the sooner your child can get the support they need to thrive. This one's a little more physical, but just as important: how your baby holds and moves their body. From the very beginning, babies start developing muscle tone, the balance of tension and movement that allows them to control their body. And while every baby develops at their own pace, the way their body feels in your arms can tell you a lot. Some babies feel stiff, like really stiff. Their legs push straight out, their arms resist bending, and they seem tense, even when they're relaxed. Other babies feel floppy. Their limbs dangle when you pick them up, their head flops back, their trunk offers no resistance, they feel almost too soft. Now again, context matters. A newborn's head control is still developing. But by 2 or 3 months, they should be starting to lift their head during tummy time. Their movements should gradually become smoother and more controlled. If your baby is always stiff, always floppy, or seems to struggle with movement compared to other babies their age, it could be a sign of a motor delay or neurological issue like cerebral palsy or hypotonia. Don't let that scare you. Early therapy can make a huge difference in outcomes, but only if we know there's something to work on. The key here is patterns. One stiff day? Probably nothing. Consistent stiff or floppy every day for weeks? That's when it's time to bring it up. And if your baby hates tummy time, cries the moment you lay them down, or doesn't seem to be progressing physically, trust your gut. You don't need to diagnose it, just share what you're seeing. Let's talk about something that gets missed all the time: gestures. Pointing, waving, reaching, lifting arms to be picked up, blowing kisses. Those early gestures are one of the biggest indicators that a child is starting to understand communication, even before they can speak. By 9 months, most babies start using at least a few basic gestures. And by their first birthday, you'll usually see a combination of pointing, waving, and reaching for things they want. Why does this matter? Because gestures are the bridge to language. When a baby points, they're saying, "Hey, look at that!" They're learning that their actions can change your behavior, and that's huge for brain development. If your baby isn't pointing by 12 months, if they don't lift their arms to be picked up, if they never imitate your wave or clap back at you, that can be a red flag, not just for speech but for social development too. Now, some kids skip a gesture or two and still develop just fine, but when none are present or when gestures disappear after they've started, that's a sign that something could be going on beneath the surface. And here's the part that might surprise you. Gestures actually predict language skills better than early words, so noticing them now can give your child a head start in getting support if they need it. Okay, this one often slips under the radar because it's not as obvious as walking or talking, but it's one of the biggest early indicators of how your child is connecting socially. By around 12 months, most children begin to point, not just to get something they want, but to show you something. This is called joint attention, and it's a huge deal. Let's say your toddler sees a bird outside the window. They don't just look at it, they look at you, then back at the bird. Maybe they point, grunt, or look to you as if to say, "Do you see what I see?" That moment, that back and forth glance, that's shared attention. It tells us that your child understands that you and they can focus on something together, that they're trying to communicate without using words. Now here's what to look for. Does your child ever point at things just to show you? Do they bring you toys or objects to share them, not just to ask for help? Do they look at your face during play or when something exciting happens? If the answer is mostly no, even if they're walking, even if they say a few words, it's something to pay attention to. Because a lack of joint attention is a red flag for social communication delays and can sometimes be an early sign of autism. And I want to be clear, this doesn't mean your child doesn't love you. Many kids with delays are still incredibly affectionate and bright, but they may struggle with social reciprocity, that back and forth dance of connection that builds relationships and language. Here's what's amazing though, joint attention can be taught. Through simple games, modeling, pointing, narrating play, it's one of the earliest things therapists work on, and it often leads to big breakthroughs, but only if we notice it. Let's talk about how your toddler plays. Does your child spin the same wheel over and over, line up toys obsessively, flick the light switch repeatedly, seemingly zoning out while doing it? Do they insist on playing in exactly the same way every time, getting upset if anything changes? Repetitive behaviors are common in toddlers. We all know kids love routines. But there's a difference between a phase and a pattern that interferes with learning and connection. Here's how to tell the difference. Let's say your child loves cars. That's totally normal. But if they only ever spin the wheels instead of driving them, or they line them up perfectly and melt down if someone moves them and they don't include you in the play, that's a sign it may be more than just a preference. Or maybe your child loves flipping pages in a book, but never actually looks at the pictures or listens to the story. These types of behaviors can sometimes indicate a developmental difference, especially if they're combined with sensory issues, speech delays, or difficulties with social interaction. Now, I want to pause here and say something really important. Repetitive play does not mean something is wrong. In fact, repetitive play is a foundation for learning. It helps kids understand how the world works. But when that play becomes rigid, obsessive, or disconnected from people, it can be a sign your child needs support building more flexible thinking and social engagement. But here's the good news. Early intervention can help shift that play from repetitive to interactive. And you don't have to change your child, you just help expand their world, gently and lovingly. Now this one can be really scary. Your child was saying mama, waving by, maybe even walking, and suddenly they're not. They stop talking, they stop looking at you, they withdraw into their own world, and you're left wondering, did I imagine that progress? Is something happening that I don't understand? This is called regression, and while some regression is normal, like when kids focus on one big skill, like walking, and temporarily pause another, like talking, a true loss of milestones is always worth a closer look. If your child was using words and stopped, if they were pointing and now they don't, if they used to engage and now seem disconnected, that's not just a phase, that's a sign. In some cases, regression can be linked to developmental disorders like autism, especially if it happens between 15 and 30 months. In other cases, it may point to other neurological or emotional concerns. Either way, it's a signal that your child's brain may need a little extra support. And this is where a lot of parents get stuck because they feel like they're overreacting or they're told kids go backward before they go forward. Yes, that can be true, but a noticeable, lasting regression, especially in communication or social behavior, isn't something to brush off. And here's the part no one talks about. It's okay to grieve that loss, to feel confused or scared or even guilty. You're not alone in that. And you don't have to have all the answers. You just need to say, hey, I noticed something, and bring it to someone who can help. Early help doesn't just get your child back on track, it gives you the tools and support to move forward with confidence. Imitation is one of the most powerful tools a child uses to learn. They copy what we say, how we move, how we play. It's how they learn to talk, to feed themselves, to wave hello. So when a child doesn't imitate, you really start to notice. By around 12 to 15 months, most toddlers begin imitating gestures like clapping, waving, or blowing kisses. By 18 months, they're often copying actions in pretend play, feeding a doll, brushing hair, pretending to talk on the phone. If your child doesn't mimic you at all, doesn't repeat sounds, doesn't copy movements, doesn't follow your lead, it could be a red flag. One of the key building blocks of speech and social interaction is this kind of imitation. It's how kids learn that communication is a two-way street. And sometimes the absence of imitation is subtle. You ask your child to blow a kiss and they stare blankly. You clap your hands and encourage them to join, but they don't respond. They may not even watch your face while you're talking. That doesn't mean they're not smart. It doesn't mean they don't love you, but it does mean that they may need help learning how to connect through play and language. And the earlier you notice, the more you can do about it. Have you ever noticed your child melting down at the sound of a blender, but being totally fine in a loud grocery store? Or maybe they constantly chew on objects, even when they're not teething. Shirt sleeves, furniture, toys. Or maybe they seem unaware of pain. They fall, bump their head, or scrape their knee, and barely react. Sensory responses vary so much from child to child, but when those responses are very intense, very delayed, or seem disconnected from what's actually happening, that can be a sign that your child's sensory processing system is out of sync. Now here's the part most parents don't realize. Every child has sensory preferences. Some love messy play, some avoid it. Some are sensitive to noise, some aren't. But when your child reacts extremely, like covering their ears at everyday sounds, gagging at the texture of certain foods, refusing to wear clothes because of how they feel, or needing to spin or jump constantly to stay calm, it's time to look closer. These can be signs of sensory processing disorder or part of a broader developmental condition like autism, but they can also occur on their own. Here's one story that stuck with me. A mom told me her toddler screamed every time she vacuumed. Not just a little fuss, screamed like he was terrified. And she'd been told, oh, he's just sensitive. But it turned out he wasn't hearing sounds the way we do. Certain frequencies overwhelmed him. Once she understood that, everything changed. She got noise-reducing headphones, helped him feel safe, and worked with an occupational therapist. Within weeks, the vacuum became no big deal. So no, you're not being dramatic if your child has strong reactions to sound, touch, taste, or movement. And no, they don't have to toughen up. They just need understanding and possibly some support in learning how to process the world around them. Before we wrap up, I want to tell you something really important. This is not about labels. This is not about panic. This is about awareness, connection, support. Because here's the truth. Every child develops in their own way. Some talk late, some walk late, some march to their own drum. That doesn't mean something is wrong. But when the signs pile up, when there's a pattern, when you feel like something just isn't clicking the way it should, trust yourself. Early intervention isn't about fixing your child. It's about giving them the best possible tools for who they are and giving you peace of mind. If you're ever unsure, reach out to your pediatrician. Ask for a developmental screening. It's quick, it's simple, and it can open doors to services that truly change lives. And please, please don't wait for someone else to notice. You know your child better than anyone. If something feels off, it's okay to say so. If this helped you feel more confident or just a little less alone, check out the links in the description. There are some great tools and next steps there. And if you want more real, practical parenting tips each week, hit subscribe. You're doing better than you think, and you're not in this alone.